Imagine standing at the gates of an elementary school, 7 a.m., watching children laugh and play as they wait for class to begin. But suddenly, everything changes. A man appears, holding a blood-stained knife with deadly intent, and begins attacking the children. Laughter turns to screams as children run, desperate to escape. One by one, he strikes first one child, then another, and another, until 13 young lives are caught in his path of terror. 8 children are spot, while 5 more are left fighting for their lives. The joyful scene becomes a nightmare of who was this man, and what darkness drove him to target innocent children so ruthlessly? Could anything have been done to stop this unthinkable tragedy? Welcome to my channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most heartbreaking and terrifying events to ever strike a schoolyard. So let's begin the story of the Nanping School Massacre. Chapter 1. A day like any other. It was March 23, 2010, a day that started like any other in the city of Nanping, China. Parents waved goodbye to their children, who ran toward the gates of Nanping City Experimental Elementary School. Laughter and excitement filled the air as students waited for their school day to begin at 7:30 a.m. With over 2,000 students, the school was normally a place of safety, learning, and happiness. But just as the clock struck 7:20 a.m., everything changed. Out of the crowd appeared a man, silent and steady, carrying a knife. His face was calm, almost blank, hiding something dark. Within moments, he started his brutal attack, and that peaceful scene turned into chaos. Laughter turned to screams as children tried to run away. What had started as a normal morning became a nightmare. People were frozen in shock, but a few adults managed to stop him before he could harm more children. But the question still haunts us. Who was this man? Chapter 2. The Man with the Knife. The Face of Evil. The man behind this terrible act was Zheng Minsheng, a former community doctor. At 41 years old, he had spent much of his life helping others. But over the years, something in Zheng had changed. He had become distant, angry, and isolated, as those close to him would later say. He carried a heavy grudge. Zheng had recently been rejected by a woman he deeply cared for, and he believed her wealthy family had looked down on him because he wasn't rich. He was filled with bitterness, anger, and despair. He told police that life felt meaningless to him, and that feeling took him to a dark place. But why did he target children in his anger? What could push someone to harm innocent lives in such a brutal way? Chapter 3. The Attack. When horror struck. Zheng's attack was sudden, violent, and unstoppable. One by one, he slashed at children who had no way to protect themselves. Parents and teachers watched in horror, frozen by the shock of what they were seeing. Zheng's fury left 13 children badly hurt, 8 of them dead at the scene, and 5 more barely clinging to life. At first, the crowd could only stare, but soon a few brave adults stepped in, managing to stop Zheng and hold him until the police arrived. The once peaceful schoolyard was now covered in blood, the air filled with the cries of injured children and devastated parents. This horrific scene left people with one burning question. Could anyone have seen the signs of this tragedy beforehand? Was there anything that could have prevented it? Let's look at how the community and authorities responded to this crime. Chapter 4. The Aftermath. A community in grief. Nanping was a town in shock. News of the attack spread fast, and people across the city gathered to mourn the children who had lost their lives. Families of the victims held on to each other as they tried to understand why their children were taken from them in such a cruel way. Flowers, notes, and toys were left at the gates of the school, where laughter had filled the air just a day before. The school shut down for the day, but reopened soon after, even though the memories of what had happened were still fresh. People were asking questions, seeking answers, and looking for justice. But one question loomed larger than any other. Would Zhang be brought to justice? And what would his punishment be? Chapter 5. The Trial. Facing Justice. Zhang was quickly arrested and brought to trial. He didn't deny what he had done. In fact, he told the police in the court that he had planned the attack, that he was driven by anger and a feeling that his life was worthless. But the court had a job to do, and Zhang's reasons didn't lessen the pain of the families or the community. Initial reports said that Zhang might have had mental health issues, but during the trial, police stated that he had no history of mental illness. This was a planned, intentional act. He was charged with intentional and the court sentenced him to death on April 8, 2010. Zhang appealed, but his appeal was denied. On April 28, 2010, he was executed by shooting, closing the chapter on his life, but leaving the grief of his actions behind. But this tragedy led to a question for all of China. How could something like this happen? What could be done to make sure it doesn't happen again? Chapter 6. A Nation in Shock. The Call for Change. The Nanping School shocked not just the local community, but the entire country. The horror of what happened that morning was felt far and wide. People wanted answers and demanded action. This was the first in a string of school attacks in China in 2010, and it highlighted a growing problem that couldn't be ignored. Immediately, schools across China tightened their security. Schools hired more guards, installed more gates, and created rules to ensure that students would be safe. The country also began discussions on mental health care and support, trying to find ways to help people who might feel lost, angry, or isolated, like Zhang had. This tragedy led to a stronger push for protecting children in schools and supporting those who might be silently struggling. But it also left the families of Nanping and the people of China wondering, how do we move forward and honor those who were lost? Chapter 7. Remembering the Children. Honoring the innocent. Though the years have passed, the pain of the Nanping school has never fully gone away. Every year, the people of Nanping gather to honor the children who lost their lives that morning. Their names Qi Quting, Chen Chuning, Yang Yuhao, Huang Shuji, Peng Fei, Chen Jiahui, Zhu Yuxiao, and Hu Chuanji are spoken and remembered, their young lives a reminder of innocence lost too soon. These were children with dreams, hopes, and futures that were stolen from them. For their families, the grief is a daily presence. But in their pain, they find strength in honoring these young lives. The entire city shares this sorrow, vowing to keep their memories alive. As we look back on this heartbreaking event, one final question remains. What lessons can we carry with us to prevent such a tragedy from happening again? Conclusion, lessons from a dark day. The story of the Nanping school is a harsh reminder of the depths of human pain and the consequences of unchecked anger. It is a story of lost innocence, of a community broken, and of a country that rallied to protect its children. But it is also a call to action, a plea for awareness, understanding, and prevention. If there is anything we can take from this tragedy, it's the knowledge that small signs of despair or anger, if noticed early, can be addressed before they turn into something worse. Compassion and vigilance, along with stronger community support, may save lives in ways we may never know. This was the story of the Nanping School Massacre, a tragic chapter in history that should never be forgotten.